objection handling, how to close, how to pitch, how to present, and even down to your demure, the sound of your voice, that can tell whether you're a serious seller or if you knew what you were talking about. And so these are the things that I've taken along with me across my career. But unfortunately, as I've grown and the more senior I've grown, I've not actually had more training into sales, but I've been able to get more senior, which tells me that there is a problem.
My name's Mike Lander, and you're listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast, where we bring you actionable insights about sales RFPs, negotiations, and difficult procurement discussions from sales leaders, brand leaders, and procurement leaders. Please subscribe to get updates when new episodes are released. Evelyn, thanks ever so much for joining me on Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. We had a great pre-record, really interesting conversation. You've got a great backstory, which I'm not going to spoil for the listeners. You can tell that backstory and what you've learned. So without kind of further ado, who are you? What do you do? And what's your favourite song and why?
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Evelyn Oluwole. I'm currently Global Senior Sales Director at WeTransfer, a file sharing platform. And I work with brands like Apple, Chanel, MailChimp, and many other great brands through the Omnicom portfolio. I love sales, and you will hear more about that later. What's my favorite song? My favorite song is by an artist called Brandy, and the name of the song is called Definition. It's just amazing. Every time I listen to it, I mean, the beat sounds amazing by Rodney Jenkins, but the actual lyrics of the song is very much about the definition of you. And so when I listen to it, I'm like, especially over the years, because it's now 20 odd years old, I feel like that definition of who I am has changed. And so when I listen to that, I'm like, who am I today? It's brilliant. Everyone should go and check it out.
Brilliant. Remind us again, what's the song called?
Definition.
Definition. Everyone, go and listen to the song. I think my definition of who I am has absolutely changed over the years. Everyone's must have done.
Absolutely.
What's interesting, though, before we get into the questions, is if you look deep inside yourself, as a human being, do you think you've changed fundamentally as a person, or do you think just like it's a slow evolution, effectively?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I don't think I have changed fundamentally, but what I will say is I've become more aware of who I am.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. I think that's very true with me as well, definitely. Anyway, as it's not a question or a podcast show about psychology, let's get into sales. Yeah. Firstly, talk to me about your backstory, which I find really interesting. You've gone from selling classified ads, to landing big commercial leadership roles, organizations like the British Fashion Council and WeTransfer. So talk about the backstory, but then more importantly, what lessons have you learned about the need for more formalized training and development for sales professionals?
So I'll start by saying that I actually didn't want to do sales. And I think most people in sales don't actually study a degree to become a seller per se.
Absolutely. Yeah, agreed.
I'm glad you agree with that, Mike.
No, definitely. Which is ironic. You study finance, or you study economics, or you study history or geography. Very few people, very few organizations have a course where you can study to be a seller. And yet it's the one thing that drives growth in organizations. It's insane.
Right. It's very, very important. I actually wanted to be a TV presenter. Like, I still do. I still got that streak.
You'd be brilliant, Evelyn. You'd be amazing. You would.
Oh, thank you. Very kind. And so I started working at ITV as a production assistant, which is a glorified name for a runner. But I very quickly realized it was going to take me quite a few steps before I got to become a TV presenter. And so I was opening the newspaper one day and I saw a role for media sales right at the back of the book, ironically, classified. And it said, do you have the gift of the gab? Are you great at speaking to people? And I was just like, of course I do. I love this. So I applied for the role and got a job at EMAP, which is a publishing house in the UK. And I was working for Draper's Record, which is the business weekly, selling the classified pages. I had no idea of the media industry, albeit that I'd done a media studies degree. I didn't really know anything about advertising, magazines, newspapers, all of that stuff. And so I started by speaking to pattern cutters. And I would speak to the old woman that lived in Kilburn who had a small business and she'd been running it for 20 years. And I was now trying to part ways with £20, which £20 even then was still not a lot of money, but for her and her small business, it was a huge amount of money to give to a newspaper. And so that's how I kind of started in sales. And for me, that was the best experience of my professional life because I learned about grit. Like I learned about doors not opening up for you, navigating your way through building relationships over the phone. You know, we didn't have emails like we do now. You had to get on the phone. You had to build a rapport with this person. You didn't get the luxury of going to their office to go and see them and show them a presentation, a deck. Didn't have any of that. You had to pick
so
up
Evelyn,
the phone.
just talk to me. Let's make it really real. Because I think selling classifieds, the salespeople I know that came from that background, and I've got another one in mind, they're some of the best salespeople I've ever met. Talk to the listeners about how did it work? Did you have like a yellow pages? What exactly happened?
So yes, we did have yellow pages because obviously at that time, emails were coming through, but like it was like your manager had access to emails. We didn't have access to it. And so you'd come in the office, you'd have yellow pages and, you know, there's a computer at the side, but you would pick up the yellow pages and you'd literally go through all the names in a particular local area and you'd use a highlighter pen to highlight them once you've been in touch with them. You're calling people who do not know you. Many people who do not know the publication that you work at certainly didn't know EMAP. And you're saying to them that by them spending money in the back of this magazine, you were going to grow their business. There was no evidence. There was no data. You know, there was nothing. It was simply you on the other line of the phone, sounding as professional as you could to sell to them the opportunity to be in the magazine to grow their business. And so, and again, just to caveat as well, you know, this is the days where we're working 5 days a week, Mike.
Yeah.
So, you know, the people that are sitting next to me, there's no hot desking. They sit next to me. There's no like blockage so that we can be in a phone booth and you can have privacy. No. Everyone can hear exactly what you're saying. Everyone can hear when they put the phone down. Everyone can hear when they're shouting at you and saying, how did you get my number? Get off the phone. And everyone can hear you when you're appalling. And so you learn very quickly how to get better at communicating with the person on the other line.
What's your biggest takeaway from being in that sales environment? What's the biggest thing you've held with you all these years in selling?
To listen to the customer.
It's a pretty good lesson.
And I think that it's interesting listening to a customer who's on the other end of the phone who you have contacted. Naturally in our head, like human nature, we're just thinking, well, I'm calling them, so I must tell them why I'm here. But actually, during those times, it's listening to understand what they need, right? So asking the right questions so that you can listen to what they need and then you can apply that to give them the best solution. And I think it's ever true today, even more so.
How did you get permission? So I don't mean written permission. What I mean is you've called someone, they've picked up. You've only got 15 seconds to earn the right
Correct.
to get them to talk about their need. Just again, what did you learn about how do you open a conversation with someone that doesn't know you and get them to talk about themselves?
So 2 things that will always be relevant now, 10 years before and 20 years time. Know the first name of the person that you're speaking to. Sounds
Right.
really like
Yeah.
People forget that. Know the first name of the person you're speaking to. Know the correct name of the company of the person that you're speaking to. So that was always the way. It was, hello, Mrs. Sandra Kilburn, let's just say, of Kilburn Associates. This is your business. I know that this is your business. I'd love to talk to you about a way that we can grow your business. You know, like grow. Those are words they want to hear. There's no one that's going to say, I don't want to talk to you because you want to grow my business. Everyone wants to talk to you. So using the right words, but also just being polite enough to say hello to the person that you're speaking to and recognizing the business and the type of business that they have. So that's how I started. That's how I kind of earned the next 15 seconds of the call.
And then you switch it to them just to talk about...
Absolutely, yeah. I would always continue with, and again, you know, like there's no internet for me to do deep research. There's no AI to help me do that really quickly. And so ultimately you're basing it around what is in the yellow pages. And anyone that knows the yellow pages at that time, there was always a description of the business that you were contacting. You know, if they'd spent like maybe £2, you could get like a couple of words on what the business was about. And so I would use that information to illustrate that I understood the business. And I would also make it very clear right from the offset that this is Draper's Fashion Business Weekly, which is a business that caters for the type of audiences that you want to attract. And I think when you put all those 2-3 points together, I think that's enough for them to say, I want to continue having this conversation and tell you more about what I do, or I'm not interested. Someone from your team has called me before, get off the line, I've got no money, that kind of thing.
Give me one headline, kind of broad stat. What was the kind of conversion rate of making calls, not to selling, but making a call and actually having a conversation? Roughly, what do you think? Out of 100 calls, how many did you get to were having a conversation?
So I would say, let's say percentage-wise, out of 100%, I'd say 25% translated into a call.
Interesting.
And when I say a call that's longer than 15 seconds.
Exactly. Yeah. A meaningful conversation with someone. I bet if you ran those numbers today, I don't know, with someone like you, what do you reckon you'd get today if you had to do it again?
So I think the advantage that we have of today is that we have access to tools that allows us to get more personalized with the people that we're speaking to. So better understanding of their business, better understanding of their pain points. I think if you do your homework, you could probably get a percentage of around about 45 to 50%, in my opinion. But how many of us do that? How many salespeople who have hundreds and hundreds of callers to get through have time to do that deep dive for each one of those phone calls?
So on that kind of topic, before we move on to the next question, what did you learn about the need for more formalized training and development for sales professionals?
So I have to admit that I find it absolutely crazy that sales is the only profession where you can be put in front of £1 million business to sell without having any formal training. I've seen it in all of the companies that I've worked for, where I've got colleagues who have no experience in sales, and they're literally told, these are your clients, these are the clients that you're going to work with. Some of them are existing, some of them are new, and I want you to go out and I want you to sell the product that we're selling. It's insane.
It's insane. It's nuts. It doesn't make any sense.
You wouldn't do it in law, a doctor,
No.
If you think of any other profession, engineer, even a product manager, there is a significant level of experience and skill set that you need to be able to do in order to do that role. But with sales, it's not needed. And I think even more as we go along, everyone is a seller, right? Everyone believes they're a seller. They're like, sales, I can do it. I can speak. I can sell. I can just do it. And for me, going back to how I started in sales, at EMAP, we were very fortunate to have really good learning and development training across it was, about objectives,
objection handling.
It was how to close, how to pitch, how to present, because ultimately you're not presenting in person, but you're presenting over the phone. And even down to your demure, the sound of your voice, that can tell whether you're a serious seller or if you knew what you were talking about. And so these are the things that I've taken along with me across my career. But unfortunately, as I've grown and the more senior I've grown, I've not actually had more training into sales, but I've been able to get more senior, which tells me that there is a problem.
There is. And you're very successful, Evelyn. Let's make no mistake.
Oh, thank you.
You've got to the roles that you're in because you're very successful at what you do. But you've had to learn yourself along the way. And that, I think it's a huge problem in the industry.
It is. The reason why now it might be a little bit easier is with shows like yourself, the show that you're doing where you can speak to thought leaders and experts who are in the weeds of the job. For me, if I was a new seller and I was listening to a show like this, I would probably be able to take a lot of notes. But, back then we didn't have that. There's also, there's books that you can read that has a lot of knowledge in them. So I think there are definitely other avenues. But I think for a business, it is the responsibility of that business to be able to train their sellers, their sales team, to get them to be better sellers and to be able to give the best service to their customers.
Exactly right. And it's an investment. It's an investment in people that gets you a better business outcome in the longer run. But sadly, a lot of businesses cut their training budgets. In tough years, we were saying just before the show, 2025 has been a very tough year for certainly all the services businesses I know. I know a lot of marketing agency businesses. It's been a very tough year. And yet the first thing that we cut is training. It is kind of ironic.
And it's necessary. If you think about any business that is starting up, and I've spoken to and mentored quite a few new businesses where they're like, I'm starting a business. What's my next step? What do I do? I've got this great idea. The thing that they're missing most of the time is that selling streak, being able to sell and to sell confidently. And I think that it's really, really important, especially if you're building a business where you want to exit. You better learn how to sell really, really quickly because you're going to be selling all the way through the thread of that business. So it's important.
It's critical. And yet, there are very few places you can get really good training. A lot of it's by osmosis, learning from great people like yourself.
Exactly, yeah.
I think also, just before we move on to the next question, it's a problem in a remote first world. How do your team learn from you when they're not sat next to you? What you said at the beginning, when you're sat next to your peers, lots of peer-to-peer learning. Oh, that worked for them. I'll try that. I'll give that a go. Let's see if that works. It's difficult in a remote first world.
Totally. And, I'm going to say something that's not unpopular
Good.
opinion, which
Good.
is that, and maybe it's to do with the fact that I come from the generation of people that work, 9 to 5, but 5 days in the office. I am absolutely of the school of being flexible and allowing for people to have time, whether it's to look after their family or their carers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm all for that because I'm a mother, so I get it. But I absolutely do not believe in a remote role, especially if it's a sales role that does involve you, client-facing role. You have to be not just in the office, you've got to be outside, right? So you cannot just be working remotely. And also to your point, how are you going to learn? How are you going to learn to understand the product that you're selling, to know the best way to sell it, to deal with all the objection handling that comes through that? You have to be in the office. So I believe in like a 4-day in the office week, which I know a lot of people might not like, but I agree with that.
But Evelyn, I'm with you. I think if I go back to my days at KPMG, great learning environment. Why? Because we were all in the office. You learnt from partners, you learnt from colleagues, you learnt from directors about how it worked, how to sell, how to engage with clients, how to deliver professional services. There was a lot of learning on the job, but they also provided a lot of training programs for us. But they were classroom-based training where you were in the room with people learning.
You need to. What we're missing out the feeling and the embarrassment of getting it wrong. And actually, the embarrassment of getting it wrong is what gets you to get it right.
Yeah.
No one wants to learn anymore. It's like, I'll just listen to a podcast and I'll just know what I need to do. And it's like, we're missing the depth and the understanding of a skill. And I think the problem, and part of the problem, is because sales is not seen as a profession. It's seen as just a skill that you have or you don't have, but actually it is a profession and should be taken seriously.
And actually, I think that embarrassment point is really interesting. I think if you're in a place which is psychologically safe, so you're with a sales team, and if it was you or if it was me that was leading the sales team, it's like, look, we're going to fail, we're going to embarrass ourselves, but no one got hurt. It's just a bit embarrassing, but we learned from it.
Exactly.
Talk to your colleague, talk to your mates, have a bit of a laugh about it, learn from it, get a bit better next time. Every day, if you get a little bit better next time, every day, before you know it, it's like, actually, I'm a lot more confident now. And actually, it's less embarrassing and I am more professional and it is working better. Very hard to do that if you're 100% remote. I don't know how that would work.
Exactly.
So, next topic. I know you're really passionate about follow-up, and as am I. Follow-up in sales, I think, is absolutely critical. Having a structured follow-up strategy is really essential. So, what's the problem currently around follow-up, and what tactics do you recommend to drive success?
So, I could talk about follow-up forever, hence why I'm called the follow-up queen.
I've noticed that. I just looked you up on Instagram. You're called the follow-up queen.
Yeah, I am the follow-up queen, and I love that for me because no one else has that title yet. So who knows where I'll be in the next 10 years. The reason why I'm so fascinated with it is because at every stage of everything that we do in our lives, and I'm actually now talking outside of sales, there is an element of follow-up that allows you to get to where you need to get to. I talk about how I married my husband and follow-up came into play with that. And, people laugh at that. But if you think about whoever you're with, your partner, someone followed up. Otherwise, it was kind of closed off. And the reason why is because follow-up is an indication that you're interested. And so when we now bring it back to sales, if you're not following up and following up the right way, then you're basically saying, I am not interested. And that is always going to be a problem if you're trying to sell something, because ultimately you have that first meeting, it goes really well. They've shown all the buying signals. They want to buy the product. Then they've suddenly gone quiet. You either think two things. They're quiet because they're not interested, or they're quiet because they need a bit of a nudge. It's the latter. They need a nudge. It's not because they're not interested. Even if they're not interested, it might be not interested now.
Yeah.
And so therefore you need to, the minute that you meet with a client, the minute that you engage with a client, share a deck, you need to think about what is the follow-up strategy. And I don't think this word is being used enough. Follow-up is just seen as just following up just to check if you read.
Yeah, just checking in.
Right.
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
I don't think it works.
It doesn't mean anything, right?
Right.
And also doing the thing, like if a follow-up structure has worked for one particular client, doesn't mean that it's going to work for the next. Like you have to use follow-up in isolation to the conversation, the person that you're speaking to, and build a strategy that works for you. And listen, we've got all the greatest tools out there to allow us to do that effectively, but follow-up cannot be ignored. It's not just a quick check-in, let me just tick that on my spreadsheet and I'm good to go. It's actually doing it with intention, which is what I always talk about.
So let's talk that through, give some examples. So what's a good follow-up strategy? Give some examples of how it works. What should people be doing? Like an ABC, something really simple, Evelyn.
Yeah. So people think that, and I included, we think that a sale is a sale when it closes. And it is. But I actually believe that the follow-up is the sale. So from the beginning, when you've met a client, or let's say you've presented a deck to a client or you've shared a deck, that is obviously your first level of engagement with the client where there is interest.
So contextually, this is a prospect. It's what I call net new. So it's a new logo. It's a prospect. You've got through to someone. You've had the first conversation. It's gone well.
Exactly.
There were certainly signs of interest.
Exactly.
What happens next?
So what happens next is you need to now, whether you're using a CRM system or whether you're using your local, Google Excel, whatever you're using, you plot their name in and you note down the time and the date that you've been in touch with them. The reason why this is important is because whether you're using a tool to support you or whether you're doing it manually, you need to see the trend of how much you're being in touch with that particular person. So based on the conversation that you've had, you now need to determine how many days does this individual need to make a decision about what I've shared. Again, we don't do this. We're kind of like, I'll just reach out to them in 3 days because that's what I do with all my contacts.
Hi, it's me. I'm back. How are you?
Right. When maybe it's actually a 6-figure or 7-figure deal and they're going to need to inform many more stakeholders before they decide if they can go ahead. You need to take that into consideration. Someone might say, but I don't know who they're going to speak to. Well, I'm going to say, you haven't done your homework.
Exactly. You're not selling, you're order taking.
Correct. So you need to understand who are the stakeholders in the business. You need to understand the role of the person that you're pitching to, understand if they're the decision maker. And if, for example, they're not the decision maker, you need to give them time to be able to digest what you've shared with them and share it with the right stakeholders to bring you back the right answer. So sending a message in 2 days' time saying, how are you? Just wanted to check what you thought. I don't think is a wise decision to do. I don't think it's a great follow-up strategy.
I'm with you. It's a bad strategy.
So once you've established who they are and the level of where they are and how long they might need. So let's say they need 5 days. So you put in on your sheet or on your CRM system in 5 days to contact them. You get a ping coming up in 5 days' time. Again, what most of us will do is just be like, it's 5 days. Hi, June, just following up. What do you think of the deck? Not going to work.
No.
Always think,
no, it's not
going to work. And you know what, Mike? Even as I'm speaking to you, this is work. And that's why a lot of people don't do it, right? Because it's not just pick up the phone, open up your laptop and get on it. So when you've thought, 5 days now, it's pinged up, I need to reach out to them. Now you need to think, what is the value first that I'm going to offer them? What's the value? Because if there is no value, what are you saying? And why do you need and want their time? So once you've established what the value is, so in this instance, share the deck, want to know your feedback, also want to know if there's anything that's unclear so I can clarify it. And if, if you've spoken to X, Y, and Z, if you've got the names of the X, Y, and Z, absolutely fantastic. If you don't know, maybe you just know the job title, wanted to check if you're head of marketing, what they think, etc. That is an email that you can share that should warrant a response back. And it should be short. So, Mike, I'm all about short emails. I don't know about you, but I never read
Same here.
emails. Are you?
Ever.
You're
no,
a
short emails.
guy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and even down to, I've got a simple technique. If someone isn't replying to, let's say I've done 2 or 3 follow-ups, following your guide, which is they're meaningful, there's a particular thing they said, I've followed up on that. If after the second time, second, maybe third, they've not come back on that, so they've completely ignored it, I just go, look, it looks like it's the wrong time, or you've found an alternative. I'm going to assume that this isn't going to go forward. By all means, get in touch next year if things change. The response rate on that's really high.
Interesting.
Even people saying, actually, you're right, Mike, I went with another solution. I'm like, okay, that's great. Thanks.
And
just have interest.
Feedback.
What was it? What was it? Why did you go with them? Just interested. Not asking you, just interested. It elicits a response.
It is a response. And you can cross it off and move to the next one instead of
you can cross it off and move to the next one. Exactly. Because, like salespeople drag deals around with them.
Yeah.
Like an old kind of like piece of cloth. It's like, oh God, they're back with that same old bit of cloth. It's not got any better.
And it
they still think it's going to close.
It doesn't make you look good. And then, we forget that we are functioning in an industry that's actually quite small. Word gets around. You do not want to be known as the salesperson that just will not let go, even when the signal says let go.
Exactly.
You don't want to be known as
that. In summary, the follow-up, if I'm hearing it right,
yes,
is A, make sure you know who the other stakeholders are if it's a bigger deal. B, when you follow up, make it valuable to the person that you're sending it to, very specific to the conversation that you had.
Correct.
And thirdly, I think, talking about, well, what would the next step be? And what's the barrier to creating that next step? Something specific.
And I'd like to share with you an example, a very recent example,
Please.
Just to make it more
very
relevant
tangible.
And more exactly. So I'm not going to name the client.
No, please don't. No.
The client is a big, massive client, market leader client. I had been trying to reach out to the client to spend with us, ultimately. And I'd been reaching out to the client via their media agency, and I was not getting any luck. I tried different individuals, and I just wasn't getting anywhere, which happens. So that naturally happens because I'm not a priority for them and I get it. And I structured my email and I made it look good. It still didn't work. I had the opportunity to go to an event. Salespeople, you got to get out there. Go to events.
You have.
Go to where your clients are. There's nothing like it. In real life events, believe it or not, works. I get to this event. My client, the potential client, is on a panel talking about social media and all things about what the brand is doing. I sat in front. I didn't get the opportunity to ask a question for that particular panel. But the minute that she left the stage, I went over to her. I congratulated her on the panel. And I said, I'm Evelyn and I work for the product I work for. And I would love to share more about it. She was very receptive. She gave me her email address and said, I use your product actually. Let's get in touch. I got really excited, as salespeople do. And I was just like, I've got the deal in the bag. I mean, I had it. It was just, but for me, it was a massive step because I wasn't getting any traction with the agency. I then sent her an email, sent her all data to kind of back why this particular client should work with the product that I'm working on, making it very, 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 very targeted to her because I knew that firstly, she's time poor and B, I need to nail this really quickly. She responded a week and a half later, Mike, not 3 days later, a week and a half later. And I gave her that time and said, thank you for this information. Interestingly, Evelyn, we're working on something that fits the product that you work on.
There you go.
She CCs the media contact that had been, I don't want to say been ignoring me.
No.
The media contact, she CC'd that person into that email. And a week and a half later, I get an email from that media contact saying they would like to go ahead with a campaign with you. Now, before that happened, a little bit that I've missed out is that when you follow up, don't just follow up via that one direction. So if it's emails that you're speaking to them on, don't just feel like that's the only way to follow up. You can follow up through several touch points. So I'd been connected with this client over LinkedIn. I commented on several
of their posts.
Front of mind. I believe, Mike, these are all the things that worked and brought us to a 6-figure close that happened within a month and a half. No word of a lie. This is a recent activation. But what I want to demonstrate here is that it is possible to nail that opportunity if you're not just thinking about one direction. Think of multiple directions. Think of multiple ways to access the client, but access the client with, I care about your business. Because if you don't care about their business, they're not going to care about what you're selling.
So I think that's a brilliant, brilliant example. Very pragmatic and about multiple touch points. And I think I've got in my head a little equation that I carry around with me, which is it was developed about 20 years ago by a guy called David Meister and his colleagues, called the trust equation. When you're building trust with a prospect, you've got things on the top like credibility and reliability and the personal relationship piece, but it's all divided by self-interest. The less self-interested you are, i.e. the more interested you are in them, your prospect, the higher the trust becomes. And the more you increase that, and the more you think about them, and the more you try and add value to their lives and help them solve their problems, even more trust develops. And that's what you're talking about, is like, think about them. What do they need in their situation? How can I help?
Yeah. Don't tell them what they know. Tell them what they don't.
Exactly.
So that they can think, I didn't think about that.
Didn't think about that. Exactly. Brilliant. Right. Last question, Evelyn. I could carry this on forever. So, last question.
Yes.
Lots of talk about using AI in sales. I think there's lots of BS being spoken for sure, but there are lots of huge benefits. So the noise shouldn't mask the real value of how AI can add value to sales. What do you think are some of the myths and some of the realities? What's really working for you that other B2B salespeople should try?
Okay. I mean, we've had this conversation, Mike, and I'm incredibly passionate about AI. So I classify myself as a super user. Yes, I am a super user. And that's because I use AI, generative AI, in every aspect of my life, not just my working life, because it helps me in ways that I cannot believe that AI or generative AI, ChatGPT, is like 2 years old, or is it 2.5? I mean,
what would you do without it?
What was I doing before is what I want to,
exactly.
is what I ask myself a lot. I've actually had to rename ChatGPT just because I use it so much, and I just feel like I need it to be known as a person. Anyway, as a super user, one of the myths that I've heard that I roll my eyes about all the time is when people say AI is going to take my job.
Right, exactly.
Like, I just think that's just absolutely ridiculous. Like, this is not the first time that we've seen the impact of AI in any profession. It's been happening for multiple years, multiple decades. You've seen AI in businesses restructure how it works, and yet there's still people that work in those particular business functions. So I don't think that AI is going to replace your job or my job. I do think AI has the ability to replace your job based on the other person who knows more about AI than you do. So the person who's going to get your job is going to be the person that understands AI better, 150%. And if you are a salesperson and you are not using AI, I am saying to you now, let this be your reminder to get to know AI and get to know it today, because it's only going to get more sophisticated. It's only going to get better. And as it gets better, if you are behind, not wanting to touch it because you just want to be old school, you're going to stay being old school and you're going to lose your job. That is a fact. Now, let me talk about why I think AI works as a salesperson, because I think that's really important. There are a number of things that we do as salespeople that, in my opinion, is quite boring. Researching is quite boring. Data capturing is quite boring for me as a salesperson. I would much rather get to know the client, understand where the client needs help, and then share what I believe is going to help them. AI can help me with those boring, tedious tasks that are so important, and it can do it really quickly. And so that's what I always use it for on a daily basis, Mike. So I use Claude at the moment, and I'm quite new to Claude, so I wouldn't say I'm a super user for that. But one of the things I love about Claude is I can, in the morning, speak to Claude about all the things that I need to do, the things of priority. And based on Claude's knowledge of how I work as a client partner, not knowing directly the company that I work for, Claude can tell me where I should prioritize my time. These are things that any salesperson could use. You could use Claude, ChatGPT, Perplexity. There's so many out there to help you structure your day and to ensure that your time is best used in the right way. Now, I appreciate that there are some companies where they ask you to avoid using ChatGPT. And I think, I'm not talking to those individuals. And I think there's other ways that you can go about using it. But for the rest of us that can use ChatGPT, it's about using it strategically. And that's enabling it to work on the things that you don't want to do, but also to work on the things that's going to make your job more sophisticated. AI cannot think like a human being. Everything that it thinks is based on what you tell it. It doesn't understand context until you give it context. If you don't give it context, you will get an answer. For sure, you get an answer about anything, but the context at which you will get it could be damaging to what you need to do. And so, people talk about prompt engineering, sure, but I'm like, just speak to an AI like your assistant.
Yeah.
Mike, you use AI, right?
Every day, like probably 2 to 3 hours a day. Yeah.
I'm with
like you. It went down 2 weeks ago in the UK, and I was doing some research for a client. And I was like, wow, I'll have to go back to doing it old school. I can do it old school because I was trained, but it's much slower. It's much slower. So I use it as, someone said to me, treat it like a very bright intern.
Yes, that's a good one.
Because if you don't tell it, if it doesn't know the context and it doesn't know the right questions, you're going to get very, very generic, bland answers out. Absolutely. That anyone could get.
And I also think that for the maybe not super user in us that use AI, we think what we should do with AI is to just ask it to do something. And actually, you should ask it to challenge you with the question that you've asked. So that's a different way, but that's a more sophisticated way to use AI. So anytime I use it, I'm like, I know what I'm doing. I understand the direction I'm taking, but I want you to challenge. I want you to tell me where the loopholes are and tell me what I'm not thinking about based on trusted sources and the information that exists on the internet.
So I've built, in ChatGPT, you can build these projects. So I've built, 15, 20 projects. One of the projects is I call business models, or no, it's called mental models. Basically, I put a problem statement into my ChatGPT project. I've asked it to think like Charlie Munger and Richard Feynman and a whole bunch of others. And then I've given it loads of models, and it challenges my thinking based upon those models. And then it tells me where the holes are. That's really helpful. It's really simple, very helpful.
It's almost like, at times actually, when I'm using AI, I feel like I'm, to your point, learning. And it's like I'm reading a book, like a business book, because it's telling me things that ordinarily, in order for me to get that information, I would naturally have to read a particular book to get that. And actually, you can learn a lot from what you get from AI.
You can. So just to finish that bit, your top 3 use cases in sales for AI, for a sales team that you're leading, what are the top 3 things you say they should be using AI for?
Research, structuring your email, whether that's a follow-up email or a cold email to a client. You should always use AI. Obviously, do not start with using AI. Start with the structure and allow it to make it come across better and more appealing and compelling. And then the third thing is to help you structure your day as a salesperson.
Right. Brilliant. Evelyn, it's been fantastic. Loads of energy, loads of great insights, very pragmatic. People can take things away. So first of all, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. It's been great.
And whereabouts can people find out more about you?
So I live on LinkedIn. I literally live on LinkedIn daily. And it's Evelyn Oluwole. And I'm new to Instagram, the follow-up queen. So you can follow me on my journey, because I don't have many followers now. You can access me now before I get massive and big. But
exactly.
Yeah, follow me on those channels.
Brilliant. Evelyn, it's been fantastic. Thanks ever so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast series with your host, Mike Lander. Please subscribe so that you'll catch all the next episodes.